Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Mindset Central with Cliché Jeff. On today's episode, we're going to talk about forcing your step back and understanding self. This, of course, is to capitalize and layer on our previous episode, which was to step back in order to leap forward. Step back in order to leap forward. And this is a massive, I'm sure you expected that, a massive topic. I feel like it all is. I feel like this is just one recurring theme here on Mindset Central and Cliché Jeff, in that I really am, and I'm going to tell you about self real quick. I really am yearning for nirvana, for a level of oneness and connection to the world that fully resonates and elevates me to levels I never even thought possible. I'm looking for a level of richness, for rich people only, otherwise keep scrolling, that is almost indescribable. And every symptom that comes with that, I want it. And my argument is that deep down in the root of who you really are, of yourself, is that same feeling. And you'll define it differently, and you view it differently, and you'll accept it differently, and you'll do different things with it. But at the core of us is a deep desire to fulfill something that is bigger than ourselves. And what we're going to talk about today is forcing that step back to understand self, to allow you to reach your full potential in life. Now, what I want to get into on this episode of forcing the step back is, I want to start with this line I read from the book again, The Laws of Human Nature. Very simple line. And it says, and I'm paraphrasing somewhat, in order for us to know we are alive, we have to be seen. In order for us to know we are alive, we have to be seen. And of course, seen is implying by other selves. So you, me, I, in order to validate our existence, acknowledgement from other humans are required for our sanity. Now, you could argue also, you look in the mirror, you know you're there, right? And while you're in the mirror, do yourself a favor and pat yourself on the back. I know it sounds narcissistic, but that's more self-esteem. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They're actually trying to break your spirit in the process. Anyhow, we all have to be seen to validate ourselves. Let's accept that moving forward for this, at least for this, the sake of this talk. So if that is true, and it's powerful in that ultimately what this means is you're seeing you through the eyes of other people. You're getting validation of you as a reflection from other people, because when they see you, you're like, oh, yep, they see me, I'm me. But that's you seeing them see you. Which in turn means, of course, your view of the world is ultimately what you see in others. How could it not be? Because any other route would then be narcissistic in that you'd have to walk around with a mirror in front of your face all day. And nobody's doing that. So your validity of self begins with the acknowledgement of yourself from others. They're in turn again implying your version and view of self is predicated on what you see in others. Now, I wrote this down and I want to read it and make sure that it comes off the way I intended it to. And this is again assuming that everything I said makes sense to you. Yourself has more to do with the ideas, opinions, and reflections of other selves than it has to do with yourself. Because yourself is constantly repeating what other selves have told you, thereby reinforcing other selves' ideas, opinions, and reflections of yourself. Truth is, if you peel back all of the proverbial layers of the onion, you'll find that you never really knew what to think of yourself other than what other selves have told and taught you about yourself. And this goes all the way back to childhood. Otherwise, how would you come to the conclusions that you've come to today? And of course, experiences have a lot to do with what you think of yourself. Memories, etc., etc. But largely where you are today, particularly if you haven't reached a level of what might be described as nirvana, utopia, oneness, consciousness, unity within yourself and the world around you. Your inability to attain is likely predicated off of reflections of other people's view of yourself. Now, here's how I like to get into that from a logical perspective. As a technologist and information technology worker, I've gone through this through almost every episode, I feel like. The world is now connected, right? The internet. The internet is a network that is always active. In order for it to maintain that level of activeness, it has to have a backup system so that if it became inactive for some reason, the backup system would come in, allowing you to stay connected. Unbeknownst to you, you'd be none the wiser. Think of it like this. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever. Your phone is connected to the right side of the world. And that connection is constant and is giving you access to all of your apps, social media, it's allowing you to post away and go crazy. But say a disaster hits over here, fucking wildfire, tornado, or your version of God sends a lightning bolt and blows up this side of the earth. This active connection would then default and fall back into the left side of the world, which has a passive connection. It's waiting for a disaster. And this passive connection has all the programmings and all the ability to carry this connection only in the event that it fails over. It's called an active passive connection. Active passive. So as long as nothing happens over here on this side of the world, you stay connected to AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, or whatever it is you're connected to. And this passive environment is always on standby, lurking and waiting. What I believe has happened to us and to those who are yearning for, but can't seem to find a way to attain, aside from the fact that you're still stuck on other people's opinions of you, is that your level of consciousness has become passive. It's become passive. It's there. It has programming. It has potential, but it doesn't activate. It's inactive, thereby causing you to just be in a state of constant redundancy. You're repeating cycles. That's what I talked about when what I wrote down is repeating and reinforcing to yourself other views and opinions and thoughts of yourself. And the only time you get triggered and alerted to become active is when some sort of disaster occurs. Or you get inspired or motivated for a brief moment. You see someone attain something, oh, that's dope, I want that. And then when you realize it takes work, you're like, oh man, you go back to being passive. When you look around you and you don't have what you want, you go back to being passive. You have passive consciousness. You're unconscious. You're unaware. You're not connected actively. And so the idea of stepping back to leap forward is that you have to get a clear understanding of self. Now, we can chalk it up to self-reflection, which I've talked about before, perception being reality. I talk about consciousness, or at least I try to. But it does require you to know where you are and what has been programmed into you. And once you have an understanding of that, that is ultimately your step back. Because what you should come to the conclusion of in that step back, in that self-reflection, and going into self, is that you are not where you want to be. And that's okay. That's okay. But you need that baseline level set and understanding of what you're programmed to do. And that step back should cause you enough pain to activate you. And from there, I'll leave you with what I thought was very simple. People will not view you differently until your view of people changes, thereby changing your view of you. Change your view, and the view of you changes. And may everything you desire come to you exactly as you deserve. Stay rich.